Mike Dorsey had been searching for peace. After 20 years in law enforcement, he wanted a quiet place to settle with his wife Angela and their 2 kids. When they found the modest single-story home at the edge of Pine Hill Estates, it felt like a win. The trees were tall, the air smelled like pine, and there were no sirens at night. For the first few days, it felt like he could finally exhale. Then came the 5th morning. Mike stepped outside to drink his coffee on the back porch. That's when he saw an unfamiliar pile near his rear property line. Dozens of black garbage bags, stacked and sagging like bloated corpses, lined the wooden fence. The pile extended farther than he could see. Old crates, broken furniture, and rusted paint cans poked out between the torn plastic. He stared for a long moment. Had someone illegally dumped this overnight? His first instinct was to call the county, but something told him to talk to the HOA first. Maybe this was a misunderstanding. Maybe it was some overzealous neighbor doing spring cleaning. He walked the 2 blocks to the Pine Hill HOA office, a small building with a sign half faded from the sun. Inside, a woman sat behind a desk decorated with artificial roses and laminated rules. She barely glanced up. "Can I help you?" Mike introduced himself and described the garbage pile. The woman straightened her glasses and finally looked him in the eyes. "Oh," she said, her tone flipping from cold to falsely sweet. "You must be the new owner on Lot 14. That's right." She stood. Her name tag read Karen Norwell. "We were wondering when you'd come in." "Welcome to the..." Neighbor Mike nodded politely. "Do you know anything about the garbage dumped on my lot?" Karen's smile didn't falter. "We had a community cleanup day last week. A few of us took the liberty of placing non-hazardous waste on properties with extra space. We assumed you'd be fine with it. You assumed I'd be fine with other people's trash being dumped in my yard. It's temporary," she said. "We're working on a removal plan. You have a pretty large back lot, figured it'd be the least disruptive location. Think of it as your contribution to the neighborhood." Mike clenched his jaw. "No one asked me. I didn't agree to this." Karen tilted her head. "Sometimes decisions are made for the greater good, Mr. Dorsey." He didn't argue. He turned and left. Back at home, Mike examined the bags closer. Some were already torn open. The smell hit him sour, chemical, and foul. Flies were gathering. He could hear buzzing even from a distance. He grabbed a pair of gloves, opened one of the bags, and recoiled. Inside were corroded batteries, rusted wiring, and shards of what looked like drywall soaked in something oily. This wasn't regular household trash. Angela came outside, holding their youngest. "What is that?" she asked. "Trouble?" he muttered. Mike called the non-emergency city line. After waiting on hold, he was transferred twice before someone promised to file a report. That night, more bags appeared. His cameras had been offline for 3 hours odd since they were brand new. The following morning, Mike found the cords cut cleanly near the base. Angela was worried now. The kids weren't allowed to play in the yard anymore. The house they'd fallen in love with had become a dump site in less than a week. Mike called the HOA board. No answer. He emailed 3 different addresses listed on the HOA website. All bounced back. He tried one more time to reach Karen, but the call went straight to voicemail. Later that day, a man approached him near the driveway. Mid-50s, suit too tight, sweating like he was late for something. "You didn't hear this from me," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "But you're not the first." "What do you mean?" "Karen's been doing this for years. She uses the HOA to avoid disposal fees. If you make too much noise, you'll get letters. If you keep pushing ... things get worse." The man left, without giving a name. That night, Mike found a note under his windshield wiper. It was typed, unsigned. "Stop asking questions. This is how things work here." Mike stepped back and looked around the neighborhood. Lights were on. Curtains moved. No one came out. No one said a word. He knew then, this wasn't just trash. This was the beginning of something, buried much deeper. Mike wasn't the type to back down. The note on his windshield didn't scare him. It confirmed what he already suspected. Someone in the neighborhood didn't want him asking questions. That only made him more curious. After putting his kids to bed, Mike sat at the kitchen table and wrote everything down. The dates, the trash appeared, the missing camera footage, the visit from the stranger, and his conversations with Karen. He wasn't ready to go to the police yet, but he wanted a record. He printed it, sealed it in an envelope, and handed it to Angela. "If something happens, give this to someone you trust," he told her. Angela didn't smile. She just nodded. The next day, Mike checked the garbage again. A few of the older bags had split open. He spotted bits of broken tile, cracked cement, and scraps of insulation. One corner of what looked like a commercial sign peeked out of the mess, as was all he could make out before. Angela called him inside. She showed him a letter from the HOA, a violation notice. According to the document, Mike's yard was now in breach of HOA waste regulations, and he had 48 hours to remove all unauthorized debris. Mike couldn't believe it. They were punishing him for the mess they created. He decided it was time to try something else. He remembered a former colleague from his law enforcement days who worked in the city planning department. He gave her a call and described the situation. She listened carefully. When he mentioned what he found in the trash chemicals, batteries, and construction waste, her tone changed. That could fall under illegal dumping, she said. And if there's any hazardous material involved, that's no longer just a city problem. She gave him the number for an environmental compliance office. Mike made the call. That same afternoon, a plain gray car parked near the front of Mike's house. A woman in a navy windbreaker stepped out and introduced herself as Sophia Reyes. She worked with the Environmental Protection Agency. Mike showed her the bags. She didn't speak for a full minute, just took photos and notes. Then she turned to him and asked, "How long has this been here?" "About 6 days. Has anyone removed anything?" "No." She knelt down and pointed to one of the open bags. "That's sealed drywall, likely asbestos-based. That alone would require a permit to dispose of." Mike didn't know much about asbestos, but he knew it didn't belong in anyone's yard. Sophia didn't stay long. She promised to file a preliminary assessment and loop in state-level inspectors. "If this is what I think it is," she said, "your HOA is in serious trouble." As she drove away, Mike spotted Karen walking her dog on the opposite sidewalk. She didn't wave. She just stared expressionless. Her pace slowed slightly, like she wanted to see who had just visited him. Mike didn't blink. He stared right back. That night, the air smelled worse. Angela closed all the windows and stuffed towels under the kids' doors. Their youngest coughed in his sleep. Mike stayed up late, scrolling through neighborhood forums and city records. He found a few complaints about illegal dumping in other parts of Pine Hill Estates, nothing concrete, just vague mentions of unauthorized HOA cleanup events and mysterious waste piles that appeared and vanished overnight. The pattern was there. It just hadn't been investigated seriously. Around midnight, a sharp knock hit the front door. Mike grabbed his flashlight and stepped onto the porch. No one was there, but something had been left behind. Another envelope. Inside, a single sheet of paper typed again. "No signature. You've invited outsiders into our community." That was a mistake. Mike turned and looked down the street. No movement, no sound, just rows of quiet homes pretending they weren't watching. He stood there for a long time, holding the note, until the porch light buzzed and flickered. The bulbs had been replaced just a week ago. Angela stood in the doorway. "Do you think they're watching us?" Mike didn't answer. He just nodded once and stepped back inside. The following morning, Mike woke to the sound of someone pacing near the fence line. He crept to the window and peered out. Karen stood by the garbage pile, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other. She wasn't picking anything up. She was photographing it bag by bag like she was documenting a crime scene. Mike grabbed his phone and started filming her from inside. She moved with purpose, snapping photos of the debris she'd claimed was just temporary. After a few minutes, she turned, glanced toward his house, and walked away without looking back. Mike reviewed the video and saved it to an external drive. By noon, another HOA letter arrived, slid under the door this time, not in the mailbox. It accused Mike of violating community harmony policies and labeled him a disruptive resident. It warned of escalating consequences if he continued to invite unauthorized government activity. Angela was the one who read it out loud. Her voice cracked halfway through. She folded it slowly and set it on the table. "What does that even mean?" she asked. "Escalating consequences." Mike didn't answer right away. Instead, he emailed the document to Sophia Reyes and called her directly. She answered on the second ring. "I've been reviewing the samples," she told him. "We've confirmed lead-based paint, asbestos residue, and some illegal solvents. That pile behind your fence violates several environmental regulations. What happens now? We're escalating to a federal investigation. But be aware, Karen's been doing this for a while. She might already know how to bury a trail." Later that evening, Mike installed new cameras, this time mounted higher, wired directly into an offline recorder inside his garage. He added motion-sensitive lights along the fence line and installed an app to alert him if they were triggered. At 3:45 the next morning, the first alert came. Mike opened the app. The infrared camera showed two silhouettes near the garbage pile, one standing watch, the other reaching into the bags. He ran outside with a flashlight, but by the time he reached the yard, they were gone. He checked the footage. One of them wore an HOA security vest. The other moved like they knew the yard well, confident, fast, not afraid of being seen. One bag was missing. The next day, Reyes returned. She brought another EPA agent with her, an older man who said very little but took meticulous notes. They asked to walk the full perimeter of Mike's property. After an hour of quiet inspection, they stood near the back fence, staring at what was left of the trash pile. "You said it appeared suddenly," the older agent asked. "Within one night, and it's grown since then." "Yes," Mike said. "It's been added 2-3 times." Reyes crouched near a rusted paint can and examined a tag. This was supposed to be disposed of through a licensed contractor. The barcode shows it was logged as removed from a renovation project 2 blocks over, same neighborhood. Mike's brow furrowed. "So she's dumping other people's junk too?" "She's recycling costs," Reyes replied. "That's what people do when they don't want to pay for licensed removal. And it's not just about garbage. This is fraud, possibly embezzlement. Back inside, Mike offered them coffee. They accepted. While sitting at the table, Reyes slid a printed map toward him. Several lots were marked with red dots. These are all locations where similar dumping occurred over the past 3 years, she said. We didn't connect them until now. And how many of those were reported? Only yours. Mike stared at the map. He recognized some of the addresses. One of the red dots was on the corner lot, an older home that had gone vacant suddenly. Last year, the rumor was that the owner moved overnight. You think she chased them out? She didn't have to, Reyes said. Trash did the job. Just before leaving, Reyes handed Mike a new card. Not the EPA one this time. It had no logo, just her name and a private number. If anything else happens, she said, call this one first. Mike tucked it into his wallet without a word. Angela watched from the doorway as the agents left. I don't think she's done with us, she whispered. Mike nodded. I know she's not. By the weekend, Mike felt like he was being watched from every direction. When he walked to the mailbox, conversations stopped. When Angela dropped the kids at school, other parents turned away. It was as if some silent message had been passed through the neighborhood. The Dorseys were the problem. On Sunday morning, Mike found a flyer taped to his garage door. It wasn't signed, but the design matched the HOA's typical announcements. The headline read, Residents deserve peace. Don't let outsiders bring in federal trouble. It accused him of reporting routine HOA procedures to government agencies and risking fines for the entire neighborhood. Angela found more copies stuffed into their bushes and wedged between the slats of their fence. Later that afternoon, Mike got a call from an unfamiliar number. When he picked up, a man's voice spoke quickly and quietly. You don't know me, but I used to be on the board. Don't trust the emails. Don't leave anything outside. And whatever you do, don't let Karen know what the EPA found. Before Mike could ask a question, the caller hung up. He paced the living room for a long time, then decided it was time to visit the HOA maintenance shed. It sat near the end of the cul-de-sac behind a fence marked authorized personnel only. But Mike had lived enough lives to know that if something felt off, it usually was. He walked there at dusk, phone in his pocket, recording everything. The padlock on the gate looked new. A security light buzzed above the shed, flickering every few seconds. The door had a keypad. He circled the building once. On the back side, a metal grate covered a crawlspace van just big enough to toss something under. Someone had. A pair of trash bags sat half-tucked behind the grate. Mike reached down and pulled them free. Inside, the first was broken tile, cement, dust, and a roll of plastic that smelled like glue and gasoline. The second contained rusted cans, a pair of dirty gloves, and several sealed manila envelopes. He opened one and froze. It was an invoice addressed to the Pine Hill HOA paying for materials from a contractor based 2 cities over. But the service? Description read hazardous debris removal Pine Hill internal disposal plan. He took photos of everything and sealed the bags back up. As he was about to leave, he heard footsteps approaching. He stepped around the shed, straight into Karen. She was wearing a blazer, clipboard in one hand, a flashlight in the other. She didn't flinch when she saw him. Out for a stroll. Mike didn't answer. Karen walked to the shed gate and locked it behind her without acknowledging the bags. Then she turned toward him with that same unreadable smile. You're trespassing. You know, that's a violation. Mike held her stare. Know what's in the bags, he said. Then I suggest you stop digging before you find something you can't bury again. He didn't reply. He walked past her and kept going, hearing her heels click behind him on the pavement until she stopped at home. Angela sat at the dining room table, flipping through a letter the kids had brought in from school. It was from the HOA, demanding an in-person appearance for disruptive conduct and community conflict resolution. Mike read it twice. So now they're turning the whole neighborhood into a courtroom, Angela muttered. They're scared, he said. She's trying to isolate us before this goes public. That night, Mike sent the invoice photos to Sophia. She replied with a single message. Don't talk to anyone else. We're coming back. You're officially a witness now. Mike checked the cameras again. No alerts, no movement. But when he stepped onto the back porch for some air, something new caught his eye. A single trash bag had been placed at the foot of his stairs. No one had touched it. It wasn't torn, but scrawled across the front in black marker were 2 words. Last warning. He stood there for a long time, staring down at it in the dark, waiting for anything to move in. The night, Mike didn't touch the bag. He left it exactly where it was, just beneath the steps of his back porch, and walked inside to grab a fresh pair of gloves and a camera. Angela watched from the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes wide. You really think she put that there? Mike didn't answer. He was already outside, snapping pictures from every angle before carefully pulling the drawstring open. The smell hit him first, pungent and metallic. Inside were more broken tiles, stained insulation, and a crushed tin of what looked like industrial glue. But beneath the trash was something new, a burnt envelope. Inside it, a stack of printed photo screenshots of Mike's family in the yard, Angela watering plants, his kids riding their bikes, all taken from a distance. All clearly recent. Angela stepped outside just as he pulled the last photo from the envelope. She didn't need to ask what it was. The look on Mike's face told her enough. The next morning, they dropped the kids off at her sister's house 3 towns over, Angela insisted. Mike didn't argue. By the time he got back, a black SUV was parked at the curb. Reyes and 2 other agents stepped out, this time in suits, not jackets. There was no casual tone in their voices anymore. Reyes shook his hand firmly and asked if he'd kept everything from the night before. He led them to the garage, where he'd placed the trash bag, the photos, and the copy of the invoice. Reyes examined the envelope first. Her expression tightened. "We've been building a case," she said. "This crosses a new line. She's not just dumping, she's retaliating." The older agent with her didn't say much, but he did lift the insulation scrap from the bag with tongs. He sniffed once, then placed it in a container. "This is toxic," he said. "She's not even trying to hide it anymore." Reyes asked if Mike had noticed anything else strange. He hesitated, then mentioned the map she'd shown him, the one with the red dots. He told her he'd looked up the vacant homes, even visited one. "They all left without selling," he said. "Some just walked away." "You think they were all forced out like this?" Reyes nodded slowly. "It's not confirmed, but that's where it's pointing. Karen's been moving waste around this neighborhood like a shell game. When someone notices, she dumps it on them. Then she scares them off." Mike showed them the footage from the night before, 2 silhouettes near the shed again. One of the agents paused the frame, zoomed in. One figure matched the same profile as Karen's, including the reflective band on her clipboard. "She's brazen," Reyes said, "and she's not working alone." They spent the rest of the afternoon collecting evidence. Before leaving, Reyes handed Mike a sealed envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "Search warrant. We're going into the HOA shed tonight." That evening, just after sunset, unmarked vehicles rolled into Pine Hill Estates. No lights, no sirens. Reyes met Mike on the sidewalk, her voice calm but urgent. "We need you to stay inside. If anything happens, call the private number." Mike nodded. Angela watched from the living room window, one hand on the curtain, the other holding her phone. The agents cut the lock to the shed and moved inside. What they found was worse than Mike expected. Behind a false wall was a hidden room, stacked with barrels, crates, and sealed bags marked industrial waste. Several bore faded construction company logos, some dating back nearly a decade. In the corner, a dusty folder sat on a desk. Inside were receipts, fake ones, disposal logs with forged signatures, names of HOA board members long gone, and at the bottom of the folder, a printed map almost identical to Reyes's, but this one had more red dots, and Pine Hill Estates was marked in bold. The final page of the folder was a list of names, many of whom had moved. One was underlined in red, Mike Dorsey. Back at his house, Mike's phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Too deep. Mike, back out now, or you'll be buried in more than garbage." He looked up and realized something strange across the street. Karen's house was dark. All the lights were off and the blinds were missing. The next morning, Pine Hill Estates was silent. No joggers, no kids on bikes. Even the usual morning sprinkler hiss was absent. Mike stood on his porch staring at Karen's house. The blinds were still gone, the driveway empty, mailbox overflowing. He turned back toward the kitchen where Reyes and her agents were going over the previous night's findings. On the table lay the hidden folder from the shed, its pages now spread out. Photos, forged documents, maps, series of records showing how neighborhood waste had been secretly shuffled between unsuspecting residents. At the top of one page was a name Mike didn't recognize. Stanley Norick, a contractor, listed as preferred vendor for Pine Hill's renovation projects. Reyes pointed to his signature. "Fake," she said, "or at least used without permission. This name shows up on a dozen HOA reimbursements." "And Karen?" Mike asked. "Still missing," she replied. "We knocked. No answer. No sign of her since yesterday morning." One of the agents leaned over the map, tapping a series of dots stretching beyond the neighborhood. "This might be bigger than just Pine Hill. We're looking at a dumping ring that spans 3 counties. She could have helped them cover disposal costs for years. They saved thousands, maybe more." Angela brought in coffee but said little. She had barely slept. When she asked what this meant for the family, Mike didn't know how to answer. Reyes stood and collected the evidence. "We've done what we can here. The case is moving federal. You're under protection now, at least until we know where she's gone." Mike watched them leave, their unmarked cars disappearing one by one down the street. He tried to find comfort in the silence, but it felt wrong, to clean, to quiet. Later that evening, a black sedan pulled into Karen's driveway. A man in a blazer stepped out and walked straight to her front door. He knocked once, waited, then opened it with a key. Mike watched from the shadows of his porch. The man didn't stay long. 10 minutes later, he came out carrying a single file box, placed it in his trunk, and drove off. Mike grabbed his keys and followed. The sedan didn't go far, just 10 blocks to a neighboring development still under construction. The man pulled into a gravel lot behind a row of partially built homes, exited the vehicle, and disappeared into the last house on the left. Mike parked a safe distance away and waited. 30 minutes passed before he dared move closer. He crept through the shell of the structure, plywood walls half built, tools scattered around like a job abandoned mid-shift. The file box sat open in the corner. On top was a stack of HOA flyers, some from Pine Hill, some from neighborhoods he didn't recognize. He pulled out a folded map, marked with pins and arrows just like the one from Reyes. There were new names, written in the margins, including one he didn't know his own. Mike took photos of everything and slipped out the way he came. Back home, Angela was pacing. He showed her the photos. "They're tracking residents," she said. "Marking people who speak up?" Mike nodded. "This is bigger than her. Karen might have started it, but someone else is still running it." The next morning, Reyes called with news. Karen had been located barely. She'd been found at a bus station in another county, disoriented, muttering about being followed. She refused to speak to anyone, demanded a lawyer, and handed over a sealed envelope before shutting down entirely. Reyes read it aloud over the phone. "I was never in charge. I just managed what they told me to. The system runs deeper than Pine Hill. If you're reading this, they've already replaced me." That night, Mike received a message, no text, just an image. It was a photo of his front yard, taken from inside his neighbor's house. Through the curtains, less than 20 feet away, he stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. Angela asked him if it was over. He didn't have to answer. The look in his eyes said it all. It had only just begun. For the first time since the mess began, the HOA board called a public meeting. A folding table was set up in the community clubhouse, chairs arranged in neat rows. A handwritten sign taped to the glass door read, "Concerned residents only." Mike arrived early. Angela stayed home watching the cameras. He scanned the room. Only a few neighbors had shown up, mostly older couples, and two younger men whispering in the corner. Karen's seat at the board table sat empty, but a heavy-set man in a suit filled the center spot. He introduced himself as Leonard Price, acting president of the Pine Hill Estates HOA. Effective immediately, Leonard began. "All current operations are suspended pending external audit and federal review. Our office is cooperating fully with authorities." Mike raised a hand. "What about the people Karen reported to?" he asked. "Who told her to bury waste on private property?" Leonard paused. "That's not something I can confirm, but we are reviewing past communications. Once we know more, we'll release a full report." A few residents clapped half-heartedly. Most stayed quiet. After the meeting, a woman named Teresa pulled Mike aside. She lived 4 doors down and had been in Pine Hill for 16 years. "She did this once before," Teresa said quietly. 5 years ago, same thing. Trash in someone's yard. The guy who lived there packed up in the middle of the night. We didn't ask questions back then. Did anyone report it?" She shook her head. Karen made it seem like the guy was unstable. Claimed he was hoarding or violating waste codes. It's what she deduced the HOA like a weapon. Mike thanked her and left, his mind already spinning. That evening, he walked back to the construction site where he'd followed the man with the file box. It was empty now, no workers, no cars. He slipped through the unfinished doorway and found the box still in the corner, but this time, it was empty. No flyers, no maps. On the wall, someone had spray-painted a single word in red. "Burn. Back. Home." Reyes called again. "We traced the contractor names you found. Most are shell companies. One of them was registered to a woman in a retirement home who has no idea her name was used. So it was all fake," Mike said. "Not all. One vendor, Midwest Disposal, filed real invoices, legitimate pickups, but the addresses don't exist." Mike rubbed his eyes. "So it's a ghost operation. They took real money, hauled the waste, and dumped it wherever Karen pointed. And your neighborhood was one of several targets." Reyes sent over another map. This one covered 5 counties. A dozen neighborhoods marked in red. Pine Hill wasn't the first dot. It wasn't even the worst. Mike leaned back in his chair and stared at the screen. Some of the marked neighborhoods were still active communities. Others had gone dark, homes sold off, lots vacant, or entirely under new development. Angela came in and stood behind him. "They're wiping places out," she said. "They use the HOA to clean their books. Then they disappear." Mike looked at the list of registered board members from other neighborhoods. Some of the names overlapped. Same people, different towns. Slight changes in title, different mailing addresses, but it was the same game. That night, a car rolled slowly past the house. Not speeding, not idling, just crawling by. One window cracked, nothing visible inside. Mike watched from the upstairs window. He didn't recognize the vehicle. "No license plate light?" he called Reyes. She didn't answer. He texted her a photo of the car. 30 seconds later, the response came not from her. "Usual number, you're too visible. Let it go." Mike stared at the message, then looked back outside. The car was gone. Mike didn't sleep that night. He kept every light off, sat in the upstairs hallway with the window slightly cracked, and waited. The silence outside was complete. No owls, no breeze, no passing cars. It was the kind of stillness that didn't feel like peace, but tension wrapped in silence. By dawn, he was still wide awake. He checked the cameras again. Nothing. 8 sharp. Reyes called. "I got your text," she said. "That number, it wasn't mine." Mike stood by the window, phone to his ear. "So someone intercepted it, or cloned it," she said. "You're being monitored." Angela, overhearing the call, looked at Mike and whispered, "We need to leave." But Mike shook his head. Not yet. Reyes told him that Midwest Disposal, one of the shell contractors, was connected to a corporate umbrella registered out of state, fake addresses, fake directors, but they finally found a real Lydian account number tied to a string of anonymous payments, all linked to a firm that handled HOA contracts across multiple regions, and on that account, a recurring expense labeled Site Coordination. Karen's name was listed under that label for 4 years, Reyes said, but 3 months ago, it was replaced. Mike asked who replaced her. Reyes answered with one name, Leonard Price, the same man who now claimed to be cleaning up Pine Hill. Mike didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he hung up, grabbed his phone, and opened the photos from the HOA meeting. Leonard at the table, Leonard shaking hands, Leonard smiling as if nothing had happened. Later that day, Mike drove to a neighboring town, one of the dots on Reyes's map. The development was eerily familiar, same layout, same house design, but the roads were cracked, and signs of abandonment clung to the sidewalks. A faded now selling sign still stood near the entrance, sun-bleached and crooked dot at the far edge. He found what he was looking for, not like what had been dumped behind his house, but neatly buried under a loose patch of gravel. He dug just enough to reveal plastic bags, insulation, and bent metal, then stopped. He took a photo, documented everything, then returned home. Angela met him at the door. "There's something you need to see," she said. She handed him a package, no return address, just their names in block letters. Inside was a single flash drive. Mike plugged it into an isolated laptop. A video autoplayed, showed an interior security feed, grainy black and white. The camera was aimed at a small room. Karen sat in the corner, slumped in a chair. Across from her, a man's face was just outside the frame. "You were supposed to keep him quiet," the voice said. Karen didn't answer. "He's turned this into something bigger than it ever needed to be." The video cut out. Mike sat back, heart pounding. He didn't recognize the voice, but it wasn't Karen's, and it wasn't Leonard's either. Angela leaned in. They recorded their own meetings, or someone else did. Reyes called again that evening. Karen agreed to talk, not officially but off the record. They met in a county holding facility the next morning. Karen looked thinner, paler, her confidence stripped away. She wouldn't look Mike in the eyes. "I didn't start it," she muttered. "They picked me, said it was just junk, said it wouldn't matter if no one asked questions." Mike stayed silent. "They watch everything, even me. You think this ends with me? They've already replaced me in 3 other places." Reyes leaned forward. "Who's they?" Karen only gave a faint smile. "You'll know when they want you to." As Mike and Reyes left the facility, a new message appeared on his phone. No words, just coordinates. He pulled up the map. It pointed to a development in a different state, one not even marked on Reyes's charts. Mike looked at her. She looked back. "It's your choice," she said. He nodded. They got in the car. Angela's words echoed in his mind. "We need to leave." But now he understood. They couldn't leave, not until every name on that map had been exposed.